Hello and welcome to another episode of Katy Coach TV for Fearless Women. Since 2021 started, I've heard so many questions from many of you about how to deal with anxiety and stress, how to release that stress, and how to live with it. That is why I invited today a friend of mine, a woman who is my hypnotherapy teacher. She's a hypnotherapist, she's the creator of the Happiness Club. But she's also an anxiety survivor. She changed her anxiety into power. And thanks to letting go of certain things, she is now helping women and men all over the world to be happy. Ladies and gentlemen, Jo Howarth. Hello, Jo. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, my darling. How are you?
So happy to see you. Thank you so much for joining me on the call, on the podcast, on the YouTube. We're gonna do everything. We're gonna hit people around the world with our conversation about the anxiety and anxiety, stress, and how to actually deal with that. The first question that I have to you is actually, what is anxiety, and how can we say actually that we're anxious, that it's actually an anxiety attack and nothing else?
Okay, so for me, anxiety is a future-based emotion. Okay, and what I mean by that is when we experience anxiety, most of the time what we've done is a thought has appeared in here about something. It might have been triggered by a conversation with someone else or something that's happened, but a thought has appeared in here about something. And we take that thought and we wander off down a path into the future with that thought, where at the end of that path, there are probably about a gazillion possible outcomes, all of which, or most of which, are utter disasters, obviously, because we're human beings. And we pick our favourite catastrophe and we decide that that's what the outcome is going to be. And the obvious emotion to appear at that point is anxiety, because anxiety's job, because all of your emotions have a job, anxiety's job is to warn you that you're in some kind of danger. So when we take this thought and we wander off into the disastrous future with it, obviously the emotion that's going to come up is the one that's going, no, don't go there. No, you're in danger. Stop now. Okay, because that's its job. It's trying to tell us that we're in danger. And your subconscious mind has no real concept of past, present, or future. So whatever you're focusing on in here, it just assumes that that's your current reality. So even though that scenario that you're making up, just to be harsh about it, but you are, the scenario that you're making up isn't actually happening, as far as your subconscious mind's concerned, it is happening, and you need the appropriate emotion to deal with whatever it is that's happening. And 9 times out of 10, that's anxiety, because you're imagining some kind of awful happening where you're in danger, and anxiety needs to warn you of that. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It
So
actually does.
Yeah, that's not a scientific explanation or a chemical explanation or anything like that. That's purely my explanation of what anxiety is and why it appears and where it comes from. And obviously the more that we feel the anxiety, the more that we convince ourselves that this is actually what's going to happen, and that this is awful. And actually the only place that anything's happening is in here, and we can make it unhappen in here. Anxiety.
That's interesting. Can you actually make it unhappen here? We have all those ideas that, oh my god, the future is dark, everything's gonna be awful, everything will crash and collapse.
Yeah.
And we tend to, unfortunately, the human beings tend to think all those negativities, and then that all those negative things will happen. Can we help our mind to think that it's actually going to be okay?
Definitely.
Awesome.
Definitely. I mean, as human beings, we are largely wired to see and hold on to the negative, rather than the positive. And that is for a fairly good reason that's a little bit not necessary anymore. When we were cavemen, we had to be on alert a lot of the time in case we got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, or clubbed around the head by another caveman, or there was threat all the time. So for our survival, literally our survival, we had to be on watch, on lookout, on alert. So anxiety was and is a necessary emotion. I'm not for a second saying that it's something that you never ever experience again or never should experience again. It's absolutely a necessary emotion, but it is an emergency emotion and not one that we need to be experiencing 24/7. It is, when I work with people, very often when I have that conversation with their subconscious mind, I will say to the anxiety, do you need to be here all the time? No. It's just gone into overdrive. So, for instance, when I was experiencing high levels of anxiety, which I'd done since I was a small child and didn't know that's what it was called at all. But when I was a small child, I was hit with one thing after another, after another, after another. And I never really knew, even when we were having happy family times, never really 100% knew what was coming round the corner next. So you had to be just on that little bit of, you couldn't ever really fully 100% relax. You had to be just on that little bit of alert, even when things looked okay, just in case. That's what it was doing. It was keeping me. And I describe the feeling for myself, this is my own experience, as walking on eggshells. It always felt like I had to walk on eggshells. I had to be very careful about what I did and what I said. And even, like I say, even in those times where I looked relaxed and happy and things were fine, that was still going on in the back here.
So it was
Because,
still this kind of alert moment that
yeah,
something will go wrong. You
yeah,
have to be prepared
yeah,
for that moment of yeah, that's gonna be, another kid will attack me, I don't know, with a bat. That
yeah.
doesn't happen. but
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 and
yeah,
that,
like with your comparison to the past, the caveman time, that's been long time ago. We are still on that alert to be safe for our lives. But I know also that you had those anxiety attacks, as you said, from being a kid. So if we are mothers, we can also observe that in our kid, and we can see that sometimes it's not just them being scared, but this is actually this anxiety that is coming, that is growing in their minds. But it goes through their life. It can get more and more stronger within years.
yeah, and that's because, so for instance, like I say, I grew up with that, and it followed me into my teens, my 20s, my 30s. Thankfully, when I hit my 40s, that's when I managed to stop the overdrive. But because it was just something that it had gone into overdrive for me as a small child, so it just became part and parcel of my normal everyday life and character. It was part of my personality. And it wasn't until I started having therapy that I even realized I was experiencing anxiety. And actually, it wasn't until I started practicing mindfulness in my late 30s, early 40s, that I realized I was experiencing it every minute of every day. And that actually it had become such an ingrained part of my personality that I didn't even really notice it. I wasn't even really aware. It wasn't until I started practicing mindfulness. I have this memory that I share of waking up one morning about halfway through my mindfulness training. This must have been when I was about 40, 41. And I woke up this one morning and I had the most enormous feeling of, like, heavy feeling in my chest. I felt like I had this rock sitting on my chest. the size of England, just the most enormous feeling. And I realized that it was anxiety. And I realized two things in that moment that completely contradict each other and are both completely true. I realized that I had always felt like that every single morning of my life, and I'd never noticed before, which sounds impossible, but is absolutely true. Oh my God, I feel like this every day, and I've never paid it any attention. But does it still inform my behavior? Yeah. Does it inform my responses to other people? 100%. Does it inform how I treat myself, how I talk to myself, how I talk to others? Absolutely. And I'd never identified with it properly before.
So it was there with you every morning, every day of your life. But I think it's also until we give a name to something, until we start learning about a particular thing, then we start associating with our feelings with that. And I know for a fact for myself, I knew something about anxiety, but I never thought that I'm having anxiety attacks. And then suddenly, when I discovered different types of things, different types of therapies, I realized that the fear that is coming to me whenever I start, whenever I used to start any type of job or any type of contact with people, I had still behind, somewhere behind the head, it's the feeling somewhere is there, and then it comes to your chest that
Mm.
this is gonna end up bad.
Yeah.
But until I was able to call it anxiety, I was unable to actually feel it properly and understand it properly and then fix it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does help. I mean, like I say, in my 20s, I was a complete, especially in my work, not so much in my personal life, but in my work, I was a total perfectionist, at the same time as procrastinating past myself, both which I know now are massive symptoms of anxiety, which I just, like I say, it was just part of my character. I didn't attribute it to an emotion that I could do something about. Um, so yeah, it helps. It can help to name it, to call it, because then you can find out what you can do to overcome it. To, like I say, anxiety isn't something, and I wouldn't recommend that someone completely cuts it out and never feels it again. It's a necessary emotion, but it's an emergency emotion. It shouldn't be there 24/7. It should literally, pop up in those genuine moments of danger. But we are very good as human beings at making those up, as in at imagining them, um, and they're not real. And so, for that reason, for me, the absolute number one go-to way of dealing with anxiety is to practice as much as you possibly can, rooting yourself in this moment, here, right now, this present moment, where none of what you're imagining is actually happening. And that's what I mean when you said before, can you really change the way, what you're making up? You absolutely can, because, and it starts with that awareness that you're making it up. I did it the other day and I can't even remember what it was about now, but I started traveling off in my head, and then I caught myself halfway down that path and went, oh no, Jo, stop. No, you're making it up. Stop, love. Where are you now? Where are you right now? I'm in my office. I'm looking out my window. The sun's shining. The grass is green. Is any of what I was just thinking about happening? No. Is it hell? Right. I'm good. And as soon
It
as
is this power of living in the now, isn't it?
yeah,
This
yeah,
power of being able to literally notice where we are, what we do, what kind of sensations we have on our body, what kind of sensations the environment that we have in the current moment around us brings us to. Some people call it also overthinking, and for me, I remember that my overthinking certain things and what's going to happen in the future moved into the anxiety mode, because I was consciously alert. I couldn't sleep because I was consciously all the time alert of something happening, of something really, like sometimes really ridiculous things that's happening in your mind. You already mentioned about mindfulness, that there's this mindfulness and being in the now that helped you to start dealing with anxiety.
Yeah, that was huge for me. I mean, by trade, I'm a mindfulness practitioner and an advanced hypnotherapist. So it was a blend of those two practices that brought me out the other side.
From the darkness to the light.
Um, and
Sounds a bit like science fiction, but it's actually reality.
it is. And mindfulness played a massive part for that exact reason, because the essence of mindfulness is to be where you are right now in this present moment. That's the absolute essence of it. And I'm not saying that every present moment is blissful and beautiful. Sometimes you bring yourself into the present moment and it's a shit show, you know, and you are struggling in that moment. Um, but but then at least it's genuine, you know, and it's happening, and you can deal with what's happening. What we tend to do as human beings is, when we feel something difficult, whether it's anxiety or something else, when we feel something challenging, because it doesn't feel very nice, we try not to feel it. We try not to allow it to be there. We try to run away from it or ignore it or bury it, suppress it. And actually, all we do in one of those reactions, what we're doing is resisting it. And pain, suffering, is in that resistance. It's not in the actual thing that's happening, it's in the resistance to what's happening. And it's the same with anxiety. You know, if you're resisting the anxiety, if you're pushing against it, actually what you're doing is making it stronger. You think you're trying to like not see it, but it just smacks you around the head even stronger, because it has a message for you. Like I say, its job is to tell you that you're in danger. Well, if you don't let it tell you that you're in danger, it's just going to keep coming back and go, no, Katy, I don't think you can hear me. You're in danger. No, Katy, you have to listen because you're in. Do you see what I mean? That's what it's doing. Like, no, because stop ignoring me, because I have
but
to
then
tell you.
but then I wouldn't do anything. I would not get out of my house. I would probably not get out of my bed. Maybe sometimes I would not even be in my bed, because being in bed is dangerous. So I should actually live under my table, and that would be more safe, you know, in case an earthquake or you know, the building will collapse or something. Then I should actually probably, I don't know, live in the forest, or not in the forest, in the field. But in the field, there might be winds that will take away my tent. So maybe I should just not live in the tent. I'm like, this would be like totally freak show, to be honest, to be in this total alert.
Again, with all of that, you're making that up, aren't you? None of that's actually
Yeah.
happening. None of that's going on. You're just imagining it might, it could, and to varying levels. You know, some people absolutely 100% believe the imaginings, and some people are, you know, a bit more measured about it. But so that there's your anxiety range, if you like, you know, depending on how much you're buying into whatever it is you're imagining. And obviously, we use our past experiences to inform ourselves of how likely this disaster is to happen. You know, if you've been in an earthquake and the whole building fell down around your ears and you broke your leg and your arm and got it, then the idea of being in that situation again is 1,000 times more realistic and scary than for someone who's never been in an earthquake and is literally just like, well, I could be, but you know. So we use our past experiences to ramp it up, if you like. But actually, when you start practicing living in the now, those things are less likely. When you realize that actually this isn't happening now, that thing that I'm experiencing in here is only happening in here, it isn't happening out here. Almost instantly, that allows you to let that anxiety go, because you realize that it isn't happening. It isn't doing what you think it's doing. You
It's
just
not
think
the
it.
Yeah, it's not the reality. It's just the imagination that goes off, and more. It's like creating the problem and the issues ourselves in our heads instead of actually
And
the thing happening.
yeah, every moment is a brand new, fresh moment. And actually, it doesn't matter what's happened to you in your past. It does because we keep hold of it and we carry it with us. But actually, just because that happened in the past does not mean in the slightest that it's going to happen now or
Yeah.
in the future. We just think it does because it happened to us in the past, and we hold on to that and we keep it alive by thinking about it and by reliving it.
Because the experiences that happened already in our lives are still sitting in our head, in our brain. um, I believe, and I think that's the case, that it's more sitting on our subconscious level than actually our conscious level in that moment. Can hypnotherapy, can you tell us more about that hypnotherapy and how actually with hypnotherapy we can, it's not about forgetting the issues from the past, but it's about more accepting, I think, the issue and kind of, learning from it, but not reliving it, and not imagining that those negative situations will happen again in our lives. So, how actually hypnotherapy could help us get out of that state and live normal life without the anxiety?
What hypnotherapy allows us to do is to access, like you say, the subconscious mind. We can find out what beliefs are driving our behavior. One of the most powerful things you can do with hypnotherapy is to release the emotion around something that happened. So, what gives a belief its strength, what gives a memory its strength, and all memories are made up, all of them. We don't actually, you and I could experience the exact same incident and remember it completely differently because it's based on our own perceptions and our own filters on how we remember things. But what gives a memory its strength, what gives a belief its strength, is the emotion that's attached to it. So, what hypnotherapy allows us to do, or one of the things it allows us to do, is to release that emotion so that, as you say, the thing just becomes something that happened, not something that has to inform our future behavior or haunt the rest of our lives. Because, and I've got a billion examples of that from my own history of things that happened to me that I held on to, and I held on to the emotion of them because I didn't want to face the thing and I didn't want to face that emotion. And so I buried it, thinking that not really thinking that that was dealing with it, but thinking that that would be fine and that that would keep it at bay. But actually, what that does when we do that is, like I say, is it holds on to it and it brings it along with us. So even though consciously I wasn't thinking about that thing or that thing or that thing, the emotion and the beliefs from it are still operating subconsciously for me, and so still affecting what I'm doing on a conscious level. So what hypnotherapy allows us to do is just go in and release it, let it go. Tell the subconscious mind we don't need to hold on to that. Reduce the level of emotion attached to it. Very often we have a pattern of behavior and we don't really know why. We don't really know consciously, we don't know why we're doing that thing or saying that thing or reacting that way or feeling that anxiety. We don't really know why. And what we can do with hypnotherapy is find out why, find out the origin of it, find out why it's there in the first place, and bring that up to conscious awareness. And once it's in conscious awareness, then you have the ability to to rationalize with it, which you couldn't do before because it was buried subconsciously.
You also changed the situation on your life when you were feeling the anxiety, going through the processes for different therapy, discovering mindfulness, discovering hypnotherapy, and learning about that, becoming specialist in that field. You started helping other people dealing with that. So at first you were working on the one-to-one, but right now you're also created the happiness club that is helping on the daily basis to people to keep this in the now, to keep the focus, to find their inner center. You provide courses, you provide different hypnotherapy or meditation sessions as well within that. How did that actually happen? What happened? Like what triggered you to create that group and attract people to have this amazing process of change on a daily basis?
It was several things that kind of all exploded in my head at the same time. I was having lots of conversations over about a 6-month period. I was a jobbing hypnotherapist. My specialism obviously was stress and anxiety because that's where I'd come from. But I was helping people with confidence and phobias and smoking and weight management and all that bread and butter stuff of a hypnotherapist. And I kept having conversations with a particular friend of mine who kept saying to me, "You do know, don't you, that what you're actually doing is helping people find happiness?" And I was like, "Oh, how interesting." She said to me one day, "Because no matter what they come to you for, what they want to feel is happier. Whatever the thing is, what they want in changing that thing is to feel better, is to feel happier." So that was playing on my mind, that I was helping people reach happiness, which for me was just like, awesome, that's amazing, how exciting. But then I was part of a national networking organisation in the UK, and I was getting inquiries as a result of that from people who lived like 300 miles away. Or, I'm in Liverpool, they were in Scotland. And at the time, I'm not a technical person at the best of times, Katy, but at the time I was even less technical than I am now. And I couldn't for the life of me work out how I would be able to do an online session. So I was getting inquiries in that I couldn't help the people because they didn't live close enough to come see me. And then I was with my one-to-one clients, I was getting people saying things to me, which I remembered from feeling from my own therapy sessions. I was getting people saying things to me like, "Okay, so if you could just come home with me so that I can just have you in my pocket the whole time." So and I could remember that from my therapy, having that hour and a half once a week with this amazing person who helped me sort all the bits out and see it more clearly and get rid of the rubbish bits and release the emotion. And this was amazing hour and a half once a week. And then I'd have to go out into the real world and manage by myself for an entire week before I got that hour and a half again. And I can remember wanting, do you know what I mean, saying the same thing to my therapist: "Please come home with me and tell me what to do in every single situation that I face between now and when I see you again, because you just feel so vulnerable." So I was having those conversations with my one-to-one clients, and then I was getting people who were close to me, who lived close to me, who were able to come see me, who simply couldn't afford a therapy session. So I had all of that going on all at the same time. And as I say, it kind of all just exploded in my head one evening. I was sat watching telly with my husband, lying on the sofa, relaxing, having a cup of tea. And I just sat bolt upright and said to him, "Oh my God, it's a club. Oh, it's a club."
Like the epiphany, this,
Yeah,
this light bulb that suddenly, like, oh, yes, it's there.
it was like all those strands just met in the middle of my brain. And I went, "The club, and it's online, and we can run it as a group, and I can give them something every day. So my one-to-one clients can join so that I am in their pocket every day. And the people that can't afford therapy can join because it'll be cheaper than proper grown-up full-on therapy. And the people that live 300 miles away can join because it's all online. And I can teach them all how to find their own happiness," which is why it was called the Happiness Club. It does exactly what it says on the tin. So that's where it came from. That's how it became a thing.
It is helpful when you get this click, this ding dong in your pocket. It's everything is in your mobile. Right now, you actually have also an app. So through the app, on the daily basis, there is a motivation. Sometimes you just pop in yourself, or there are other trainers that are working with you, that popping out at a specialist, just telling about the topic of the day. And it helps us simply get back to this moment. It's like, okay, oh yeah, I felt that. Oh yeah, that's how I can deal with it. Oh, awesome. So you
Yeah.
can actually start practicing it day by day, because indeed, when we are going through a process of change, we need this kind of, day to day, maybe kind of accountability partner.
I very much see the club as me putting my arms around all the members every morning and saying, it's okay, I've got you. Have a read of this. Think about whatever you're facing. Think about it like this today, or have a look at it like this today, or try this today. And I'm right here if you need me. And that, for me, that's the club. And part of the membership is 24/7 access to a qualified therapist, of which I'm just one. And quite a lot of the members actually don't use that part of the service. But I was really curious a couple of years ago. I was like, why aren't they using it? Some of them use it all the time, and some of them just don't use it ever. So we did a survey out to the members to find out why, and the answer that came back was just beautiful. And it was resoundingly from everybody that answered the survey. The response was, I know I can, so I don't need to.
And that's awesome, because that means that they already received this boost enough.
Yeah,
And they're kind of aware that, okay, it is within the reach of my hand, so I can feel safe.
yeah, that's it.
And that's pretty much an awesome thing. Like, when we realize that this help is near, we tend to be more relaxed and the stress simply is going away. I want to talk about one more thing, about the confidence.
Okay.
How and with what tools for you it was the best to actually move away from the anxiety into that confidence zone?
Yeah. Well, again, the blend of hypnotherapy and mindfulness helped me very much. One of the biggest things I think I learned to stop doing, or mostly stop doing, because sometimes it's hard to stop doing, I'm a human being at the end of the day, is what I call comparisonitis. I learned to stop as much as I can, and to catch myself if I do fall into it these days, to stop comparing myself to anybody else, because it is not relevant in the slightest. There are people that started their businesses the same time as me who are wildly more successful than I am. There are people who started their businesses a couple of years ago who are wildly more successful than I am. But they're not me. They don't have my challenges, my beliefs, my lifestyle, my way of living, my anything. They're not me. There's absolute, I think it's one of the plagues, if that's not too strong a word, of this society, this world that we live in right now, is that we compare ourselves to other people. There's a very famous quote, and I have no idea who it's by, but it says, don't compare your inside to somebody else's outside. And that's it in a nutshell. That's what we do, especially in this world of social media. We see all these amazing, beautiful, brilliant things going on, and we think, man, they've got that together, and I haven't. And it isn't that at all. 9 times out of 10, you find out that the person who looks like they've got it all together hasn't at all, which is incredibly disappointing when you find it out, I have to say. But you put that pressure on yourself then, and you beat yourself up for not being as good as that person that you're only seeing the outside projection of. And we're much harder on ourselves than we are on other people most of the time. So stopping that comparisonitis and realizing when you're doing it, catching yourself when you're doing it, and realizing, hang on a minute, no. Again, with the mindfulness, I am where I am, and that's okay. I am right where I am right now, and that's okay. And I'm doing the best I can. Again, that for me was one of the most powerful realizations, and one of the most powerful phrases that I teach on a regular basis. We are all always doing the best we can. There is no question about that. There is no doubt about that. Because if you could do any more, you would be. Whatever you're doing in every moment is the absolute best you can do in that moment. And if you can apply that to other people, then you need to start applying that to yourself, which is why. And this is the thing. This is because we're harder on ourselves. We can apply that to other people, and then beat ourselves up for not being better. But the more that you know, those are two of my mantras. I am where I am, and that's okay. And I'm always doing my best. I'm always doing the best I can. And once they become part of your psyche, then your confidence naturally just starts to follow, because you and you stop comparing yourself to other people.
If I may simply add to that, because one of the things I can relate to is literally the managers. So if you ladies who are listening to us and watching us are managers, one thing is not to compare yourself to other people, but also very, very important thing is not to compare your teammates to one another. Each of them, they have different moments. They are in the different moments of their lives. They do different things in the current situation, and they have probably different life experience as well, and business experience on the way. I know because I've been there in the past in that situation, when I hear like, you should be like her or like him. No, I am myself, and that's okay. And that's fine if I'm doing things slower or differently, as long as your teammate is getting to the outcome and delivering the report, the job done. It really doesn't matter how they get there, as long as they're getting to the right result, and as long as you're provided with the outcome of that. So definitely do not compare yourself, and
No,
don't compare others as well.
yeah, totally. I agree with that. And um, to give you my own example, a couple of years ago, I decided that if I was going to take over the world, which obviously is the ultimate aim, world domination we are on, and that I would need some help to do that. And I started training people up to become Happiness Club trainers to deliver my program, my corporate programs, and my schools program. And currently we have 14 trainers in the UK. We have one in New Zealand. We have one in Mexico. We've got another 8 or so in training.
So the world domination is getting step by step.
Oh yeah, baby, we're getting there. And but they're all self-employed. I don't employ them. They're all self-employed, partly because at the time when I had the idea, I couldn't afford to employ anybody else, and partly because I wanted them to be able to do what I've done, which is to build a business that works for me, with my lifestyle and my family, in the hours I want to work. I didn't want to have that pressure for myself of saying, come on, I pay you for this many hours every week. And I didn't want to be that person. And I didn't want to put the pressure on them. So they're all from different backgrounds. They've all experienced different things. They all have different things going on in their lives. So some of them are, you know, their businesses are flying, and some of them they're just starting, but they're all working out how to build this business their way, around their lifestyle and their families and the other things that they want to do, because there are other things in the world, obviously. Um, and that for me is really important. And like you say, I don't compare them to each other, because each one of them has their own challenges, has their own beauty, has their own ideas and their own way of doing things. And to try and squidge people into doing stuff the same way is counterproductive, isn't it?
To be more productive, to be more confident, and to be more happy, I think Jo has plenty of solutions for that. You can always join the Happiness Club and give it a try, give it a go. I always say, like, give it a go, give it a try. You never know. Maybe that's actually something that you're looking for, and that will help you. Thank you so much for today, for the conversation, for all the tips and tricks, for especially for sharing your story and admitting that you are the best version of yourself at this current moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you, and have an amazing day, everybody. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy it, and maybe just look around yourself right now and see where you are. see all those things that are around you, and just smile to all the things that are happening around you at this very moment. Thank you again. Have a good day. Bye.